and welcome back to the channel. Today's video is an upgrade video I have for a recently upgraded build I did on my AMD Ryzen gaming / editing PC. So while I kind of take this apart here for us to do the actual upgrade, if you look back in my YouTube history, you'll see that I did a Ryzen 5 2400G build a while back, and we were using the internal GPU just to kind of test what gaming performance was like. And by internal, I mean onboard GPU. It has a Vega 11 graphics chip on it. A little bit after that, I went ahead and upgraded the graphics card to an RX. I want to say it was an AMD RX 560. I can't remember exactly, and it was really good. That card was fine. However, a couple of months ago, I came across a screaming deal on a GTX 1070 superclocked from EVGA. I found it on Facebook Marketplace for under $200. So I went ahead and grabbed it, and then I decided, you know what, I'm going to toss it in this machine here. But since I was going to go ahead and do that, I wanted to go ahead and upgrade a couple of other things that were in here. I had a 3 terabyte drive you'll see later in the video that just wasn't working right. It was having a bunch of issues, and I had cobbled together a couple of small SSD drives from like old laptops and thrown them in there. It's kind of a Frankenstein, and it worked fine other than that 3 terabyte drive. But Black Friday came around, and I found a really, really good deal on I think it's 240 gig NVMe M.2 drive, and then also a 1 terabyte regular SATA SSD. So this motherboard, which is the Gigabyte gaming Wi-Fi, I think it's model AB350, something like that, ABN 350. I'll have a link to all the parts that were into the original build in the comments below. But this board is a budget board. It was one of the very first small ITX boards for use with this type of platform. So I went ahead and bought it, and as you can see here, I'll show you the actual M.2 slot is on the bottom. So you can imagine adding an M.2, and it's, again, because it's the size of this board, it's really small. It's an ITX. I mean, look how small this is. The fan for the CPU cooler takes up almost all of the board. So we had to take it out here so that I can go ahead and add the M.2 SSD to the bottom. So here it is. It's 250 gig. It is from HP, and again, it's NVMe, so it is super fast. After we do the actual build part of this upgrade video, I'll put some benchmarks in of both SSD drives that we're going to add, right? NVMe and M.2, as well as the GPU that we're going to add in here in a second. So the installation of this is very simple. You pull it out, and you can see here it's got a notch on the on one side, which aligns with the notch on the actual bottom of the board here, and then on the other end in the very middle is another notch that's taken out to put a screw in that holds it down against the board. So to upgrade it, or to add an M.2 drive, you go ahead and remove that screw like we just did. You go ahead and line up the notch with the notch, the receiving end of the notch, and then you push it in. So here we'll just give it a little bit of a push. It'll click into place when you do that, and then once you feel it click into place, and you'll see here as soon as we snap it in what it does. Boom, there you go. And now you just push it down against the board, and then put the retaining screw back in and screw it down. I'm trying to do this with, 2 hands while keeping it in the frame of the camera, so apologize for the, kind of shakiness and it taking a while. I don't have it straight down on my bench. And by the way, the other thing is I wanted to talk about here, the recording rig I had set up temporarily here in my studio obviously is not the best, so apologize for that. Future videos will have a much bigger workspace with a more properly positioned camera angle, and that'll make sure that you're not getting seeing the carpet and all that kind of stuff. But it's not that big of a deal because you're still seeing what you need to see, so it is what it is. But anyway, we've gone ahead and installed the M.2 NVMe SSD at this point, so now we just have to screw the motherboard back down. Because it's ITX and it's very small motherboard, it only has 4 screws, 1 in each corner. So what we'll do here is we'll just kind of put the 4 screws back in, screw it down. And just to remind you, you need to tighten these down until they're snug. You want to make sure that you don't want to over tighten them. You don't want to, strip the screws or break the mount points underneath it, but you don't need to tighten them down really, really tightly because, it just needs to be snug. Especially in this case, we're looking down from the top of the case. In this particular case, the motherboard sits horizontally instead of vertically. This is a Corsair case, by the way. Again, I'll put all the parts in the description, the same ones from the original video. I'll just copy and paste them in there. So I actually prefer this orientation, especially in ITX builds, because if for some reason I wanted to upgrade this processor, which hint hint I will at some point, to the more than likely the 2700X, if I put a big air cooler on there, I'm not really a water cooler type person, but if I were to put a big air cooler, gravity is pushing down on the board and CPU as opposed to it being vertically aligned, and then kind of, gravity is pulling down on that CPU cooler tower and kind of pulling on the CPU socket. It's not that big of a deal, to be honest, but it's better that way. So what we're going to do here, I just unscrewed the tray, the tray cover on the back of the unit that covers the hard drives. And the reason is, again, we're going to go ahead and take out all of the hard drives that are in here, and we're going to put in one of the new Samsung, I think it's 960 EVOs, and that'll be the primary data drive. Here is the 3 terabyte Seagate Barracuda. You can see when you see those little gold strips around there, it was a hard drive that I actually scavenged out of an old USB external hard drive. So I had it for a couple of years. I think it already had reached its lifespan. I wasn't really getting any smart errors with it, but like I said, I was just having a lot of trouble copying data to and from the drive. Sometimes it would fail. Other times I would try to read from that data and it would be corrupted. So it was just time to replace that drive. And the downside is that I traded 3 terabytes of storage space for 1 terabyte now of a data drive. However, I did go ahead and buy an external 5 terabyte USB drive for storage. That hard drive I just showed you and this one were both hard drives I scavenged out of old laptops that no longer worked. One was a 256 or 254 gig Samsung drive, and the other one it was 100 and something gig drive. They're small, but they are SSD. Even though they aren't the fastest, they're still SATA SSD, so they run pretty fast. This is the brand new Samsung 860 EVO that I got on Black Friday. So obviously the 960s are out now, I think, but this was a really good deal on Black Friday, so I grabbed it, and it is a terabyte. It's plenty of space for what I need to do, which is install a couple of games and mainly use it as a drive to hold my data and applications, right? Other than the actual applications that sit on the NVMe drive, that's the C drive on this machine, so it boots. This is mainly data drive. So my Steam library, my GOG library, this is where all of my DaVinci Resolve files sit, and I work on them from this SSD drive. It's just a basic data drive. My downloads have been redirected here, right? I try to keep C as free as possible, other than applications that are small, right? So the Windows operating system itself, and then DaVinci Resolve, the actual application, Audacity, the actual application. All of these are kind of small applications that won't fill up that 250 gig drive. But if I were to start putting my Steam library and all that, with games being 50, 60 gigs, it would fill up really fast. You'll see later when I do the benchmark for the SSDs that my D drive at a terabyte is already at, I want to say 24%. So I don't remember the exact number. We'll see it when we get to the benchmarks, but it's already a quarter full. Let's just say that. So this is a much better way, I think, of splitting data. It also makes it easier later on should you decide to upgrade your NVMe drive or reinstall Windows. You can reinstall Steam and just point it to that space where you kept your Steam library, and you don't have to re-download all those games. So that's a really awesome thing. So we go ahead and install the Samsung drive here. I put back one of the small laptop hard drives to use it as a scratch drive for my video editing. So that went back in, and then now we're just gonna screw the cage cover, or the cover back on, and then go on to the next part of the build. One of the things I do love about this case is that it primarily operates with thumb screws. So while you do have to use a screwdriver for certain things like, securing the motherboard to the tray inside the cage, most of the pieces that you're going to work with in the back of the case and the periphery are all thumb screw driven. So in theory, it's a toolless case minus the actual mounting of the motherboard. So now that we've mounted the hard drives in the trays and pushed them in and closed the tray area from the rear of the case, now we've got to plug all the stuff back in, right? So we've got to put the SATA cables and the power cables back in and plug them in. And this is just connecting the front panel connectors to the motherboard. These are the ones that power the case on and off. Hard drive activity LED, reset switch, and a whole bunch of stuff. So that's what we're doing here. We're connecting all this stuff in. And this case, this motherboard, I should say, actually has a little bit of RGB on it as well. I think as you're looking down, the top and the bottom have like a little strip of RGB so you can change the color if you want to. We just connected the USB 3.0 header. This, I believe, is one of the fan headers we're connecting here. So this motherboard's actually really good for its size, and this is the other fan header. I had to use a splitter because this board, being so small, has very few fan headers. So I had to use a splitter to get I believe it's the front and that side case fan, both running off of the motherboard fan header. We just connected the CPU power there, and here's the GPU. Again, it's the EVGA GeForce GTX 1070 superclocked. Again, I'll have a link to the card in the description of the video so you guys can check it out. Sorry I didn't hold it up to the camera so you could look at it, but it's just a basic, graphics card. Here I'm kind of showing that it is a little bit loose without, screwing it down on the back of the case, which we're going to do right now. But this card is a solid performer. So if you don't want to spend all the money on the new RTX cards, but you also don't want to go, try to salvage or dig up 1080 Ti, which people are still trying to charge $800, $700. The cheapest I've seen is $600 and very used, and you don't know if those were used for mining. The 1070 cards, as far as I know, weren't really used for mining. I'm sure some were, but it wasn't the most popular card for mining. So if you get a used one, chances are it wasn't used for that. It is a solid card for the price. And if you can pick it up for the price I did, which is under $200, it's a steal. So again, I found it on Facebook Marketplace, but and I recommend using that. I mean, I'm okay with buying things off of eBay, and I buy a ton of stuff off Amazon, even Amazon Marketplace. But the reason I like Facebook Marketplace is because it's local, right? So I'm not saying that, there aren't scammers. There absolutely are on Facebook Marketplace. But, if you're pretty vigilant and you pay attention to the ad, you pay attention to the prices and the descriptions, and, you talk to the seller and kind of figure out, what were they doing with it. And if they sound relatively knowledgeable and they know what they're doing, pretty good chance that it's not a scam. The other thing is, though, it's Facebook, right? So if their account's been around for a bunch of years and, you click on their account and look at it, and you can kind of tell that it's a real person. It's not a fake account that was set up, 2 weeks ago to sell something. The chances of scam are a lot lower, because if they were to try to scam you, you could obviously report it to the police, and, they would, go after that person. So here we're just tying away all the cables with zip ties. In this particular case, because again, this is a mini ITX board and the case is rather big, even though it's a small case compared to a full tower, but it's still very roomy inside. You don't really need to do this level of tying down. The reason I do it is because these type of cables, as they get heated, a lot of times they'll start moving just because you're heating the plastic and the rubber, and it loosens it and they'll move. And you don't want them to like move into the case fan or the CPU fan, which I've actually had happen before in other cases. So by tying them this way, kind of towards the middle and above everything, it makes sure that the cables themselves don't interfere with your fans. So here we're going to go ahead and jump into the actual benchmarks of the SSD. So here is the 250 gig NVMe drive from HP. You can see here it's my C drive. I already have it 65% full. So even just the base applications I have filled it up. But look at the performance numbers on this, right? It is fast, 1871 megabytes per second, right? That's NVMe, because most of you'll see later when we do the SATA, the Samsung one, this blows it out of the water. I think it's, almost 4 times the speed of the Samsung, at least in the for a couple of the tests, not all of them. The first two, so the sequential reads and writes, the top one is around 4 times as fast, or the read is, at least. I think the write is maybe twice as fast. But either way, look how fast this hard drive is. And I can tell you from using it, like actual real world use, it is incredibly fast. So here is the 1 terabyte Samsung 860 EVO. As you can see, I have it 24% full already. And you can see here the read speed is 563 megabytes per second. So almost a quarter, maybe a little bit above a third of the performance of the NVMe drive, but it's still very fast. So I don't want you guys to think, I have to have only NVMe. This could have made a fine boot drive. Absolutely. 563 read, 532 write is very respectable, very fast. You will notice a difference, though. I'm not going to mislead you there. There is, you notice a difference when you're booting up stuff on the C drive on NVMe versus SATA. But it's not like this is unusable. This is perfectly usable, and it's very fast. It's way faster than doing it with spinning disks. So now we'll move over to the actual GPU benchmark. Here I'm running the Heaven benchmark, and you can see there the FPS and what section of the benchmark we're on. I'm actually going to go ahead and let it run through the entire benchmark, and at the end, it'll show you the actual average FPS, max FPS, min FPS, and all that kind of stuff. So let's let it cycle through here and until we get to that point. But I do want to point out, like, even with this very compressed YouTube video, look how clean this looks, right? There's not really any screen tearing. The colors are, perfect. The textures are perfect. The shadows are immaculate. It just looks great during this benchmark. And again, this is just a GTX 1070. This is not a 1080 Ti. This is not even a 1080 or a 1070 Ti for that matter. This is just a superclock 1070. So if you are, wanting to game, I think this is the best GPU value for the money, right? Obviously, if you just want the best performance, you'll get a 1080 Ti. But I think, performance per dollar, the 1070 is actually the best value. And that's just because, again, the price is so low and the quality you get is so high. This here is set to 1080p, right? So we're rendering all this in 1080p. I do run a 1440p monitor normally, and I actually run my games at a full 1440p, but I wanted to do this test at 1080p to show you what it looks like, because I think most gamers right now are still, especially if you're playing FPSs or competitive, esports types games, you're still doing it at 1080p because of the performance, right? You're getting a lot more frames per second. However, if you're someone who's, not playing competitive games, playing maybe some RPGs or slower moving games, and you want to run at 1440p, this GPU will do it. And I have an ultra wide, right? A 34-inch ultra wide. So I want to say the resolution's 3440 by 1440 or somewhere around there. I can't remember the exact. It's the LG 34-inch ultra wide. I'll link that in the description as well. And it runs it just fine. And the monitor has AMD FreeSync, and I know that now, NVIDIA G-Sync will also work with FreeSync. I haven't tested that or set it up yet. But again, we're running here at 1080p, and look at how clean it looks, right? On a 1070. So if someone tells you have to have a 1080 or a 1080 Ti, it is not true. It's absolutely not true. You can run on a 1070 very well today, and you'll get, again, excellent colors, excellent shading, excellent shadows, excellent textures. Here we're looking at, lighting effects, and now you saw a little bit of a stutter there. Also keep in mind that I'm actually recording this on the same machine that I'm running the benchmark on. So that tells you something, right? Your performance will be even better than this if you're not recording on the same machine. I don't have a secondary editing PC or a secondary capturing PC, so I have to do them both on the same. So that's going to impact it, obviously. But again, running the Heaven benchmark at 1080p on this machine while I'm also capturing the footage live on the same machine, we're getting excellent performance numbers. And again, we'll see it here in a second when we get to the end of the benchmark. So my advice would be, if you're looking to upgrade your GPU and you have, a 560 or less, or maybe a 1030 or a 1050, and again, you don't really want to spend the dough to get an RTX card, which I think right now are kind of a ripoff. I wouldn't buy one personally. But you also, I know you would want a 1080 Ti, but again, people still haven't quite let those go in terms of pricing. At some point it will, right? At some point you'll be getting a 1080 Ti for under $500, and that's a steal to get it at that price, right? But at least for the next couple of months, no. So again, 1070 I think is where the sweet spot is. So let's go ahead and get ourselves in here to the end of this benchmark and kind of show what the results are. So here we are, 149.5 FPS. Look at the score. We did hit a minimum of 9.5, and again, I think that's just because I'm recording on the same exact machine that I'm rendering on. But look at the max FPS, right? 288.2. But if even then, right, 149.5 average. So if you have a 144 hertz monitor, you're exceeding the speed of that. So again, this was just a small upgrade video of upgrading my Ryzen 5 2400G gaming/editing PC. Let me know in the comments what you thought about not only the upgrade, but the performance you saw of the NVMe drive, the SATA SSD drive, and the GPU. And let me know, what are you guys building? What are you putting in your PCs? Are any of you guys running 1070s, or are you looking to upgrade to a 1070? I'm looking forward to the RTX cards coming down. I do want to get an RTX 2080 at some point, but right now the value is just not there. So again, I want to thank you guys for watching this video. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and stay connected with me on social media. I'm Mnemonic Tutor everywhere, as you can see here: Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and I do stream from time to time on Twitch as well, also Mnemonic Tutor. So again, let me know what you think in the comments, and as always, I'll catch you guys in the next video.